Hello and welcome to this special edition of Capture. I'm News Director Clint Simoni. This morning, I sat down with a panel of hand-picked members from the APU community to discuss diversity and racial issues on college campuses. But before we get to that, we start with a story that has been at the center of worldwide attention. On Friday, November 13th, ISIS launched a number of terrorist attacks in Paris, France. These attacks included a series of shootings and bombings, killing 129 people. These acts of terror come less than a year after the Charlie Hebdo shootings, which claimed the lives of 11 people in Paris last January. As people from all different nations watched Friday's events unfold, cities from all over the world lit up their famous monuments in solidarity with Paris. Since the attacks, the French military has launched airstrikes on Syrian cities and carried out a raid in a Paris suburb that left 2 dead, including the suspected ringleader. Here in the U.S., these attacks continue to prompt discussion regarding national security and the Syrian refugee crisis. In a climate of fear, many Republican government lawmakers have suggested a pushback in allowing Muslim migrants to enter into the country. Earlier this week in Turkey, the president denounced those suggestions as being contrary to U.S. humanitarian values. Despite the acts of terrorism in Paris, the president of France, François Hollande, announced that 30,000 refugees will be welcomed into France over the next 2 years. A series of stories concerned with diversity and racial issues on college campuses have captivated the nation's attention. The stories were catapulted by student demonstrations at the University of Missouri that led to the resignation of the school's president. The concern for racial climate gained traction on other campuses throughout the nation, culminating in student demonstrations at more than 100 colleges and universities. One of these was just down the road at Claremont McKenna College, prompting the dean of students to resign. All of this brings us to today's conversation. Earlier this morning, we were joined by student representatives and members of the administration to address what all this means for APU. So you join us right now with Capture's assembled panel on the topic of diversity and racial relations across college campuses in the United States. So first of all, thank you guys all so much for being here today. Can we just start by having you each briefly introduce yourselves to the people viewing?
Hi, my name is Aaron Hinojosa, and I am the Acting Executive Director for the Student Center for Reconciliation and Diversity.
Hi, my name is Dalia Velasco. I'm a senior at APU and a member of Activate.
Hi, I'm Kim Deneau, and I'm a Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer and also a faculty member.
I am Maurice Johnson, and I'm the current BSA President.
All right, great. Again, thank you guys all so much for being here. Aaron, I want to open this conversation with you. Can you tell me what the significance is of racial relations and diversity on college campuses sort of entering a national spotlight, especially considering the recent things that took place at University of Missouri and even closer to home at Claremont McKenna?
Certainly, Clint. Yeah, the current events taking place are significant in many ways because we're looking at as we grow more and more diverse, not only as a nation, but as a campus here at APU, we definitely do see the pressing needs of not only our students of color, but also for our faculty and staff in awareness for the needs for the students on campus. What's taking place now on our campuses, you can go back to the early 60s and see where the significance of students' voice on campus has really been the force of bringing things into light. So on the campuses of the UC, campuses up at Cal, civil rights movements and so on, and you see that now. I think the biggest part of the change is social media and how the narrative and the perspective is changing, every moment and second as these things unfold.
So an open-ended follow-up to that in the entire panel is you see these demonstrations going on. University of Missouri is one of the examples. How would you assess the model that those students are using to bring forth these issues into a public light? Anybody?
Yeah, I think students of color have realized the majority, or not, I'm sorry, not the majority, the numbers that they have on campuses, and they're really utilizing that and social media. I think it's really important to make these issues aware, and they've really tapped into that and having, using their voices to really bring these issues to light.
Does anybody else want to follow up with that? Do you think that the way they're bringing these issues into the light, is that going well? Could they have done a better job? Is there a different way to bring this conversation to a more forward position?
I think the different perspectives would say, different groups would say, oh, they could have done it this way or they could have done it that way. the bottom line is they have an important message that they're trying to convey to the public, and it's really by any means necessary. Yeah. So we could argue about the strategy, but I think the message is more important than even the demonstrations.
Would you consider their message to be successful as of right now, the way things are playing out?
So I think it's been successful to the extent that they have captured the ears of America and definitely their campus constituents, presidents and other students, faculty and staff. So I would say it's been very successful in that way. But I guess one of my concerns as we continue to watch kind of things unfold is what's the next piece of this? Will faculty, students, administration start working together, or will we kind of silo and stay in our separate corners and still not come together? Because honestly, I think the working together is where you see that powerful transformational change versus transactional change.
Right, and I want to touch on that later. Where do we all think this conversation is going? Because I think that's a very important point to make. I mentioned earlier that we have over 100 campuses that are participating in demonstrations. Do you think that this conversation is only going to gain more traction, or do you think it's sort of top ending as of right now?
Well, I think it's going to continue, and it's been a conversation that has probably been an underlying conversation for decades. I think with the student voices now rising to where they are, I think more campuses will do that. I think it's important that they continue making not only their campuses aware, but the faculty, the staff, and students that they attend college with, live with, and go to class with.
To bring this conversation to an APU perspective, Maurice, I'm going to come to you. Do you consider APU, do you think they've done a good job bringing diverse voices on campus and historically, or do you feel that this message hasn't been achieved the way they would have wanted?
I think for me, I had a conversation this past week about them, and I think that coming from where I come from, I've been here for 4 years, so I think there's been a large progression in the area, but I think we've gotten thus far. I think we still have kind of a ways to go. I think from coming from my freshman year in 2012, I think there has been a kind of a progression towards having these conversations of diversity, having conversations of students of majority as well as minority. But I do think that there still is kind of a long way that we do have to go.
Yeah, and to clarify, that's a positive progression that you've seen
from
your freshman through senior year. Okay. Speaking of diverse voices on campus, Dahlia, you're a member of Activate. When we talk about Activate, it sort of came to be last year after the Wanted by Walsh movement specifically sort of came together in that regard. Talk about Activate in a little bit and how it's come together.
Yeah, so Activate was kind of formed by all the ethnic org presidents last year. And I think for them, they were in their senior year, they were all seniors actually, and they were seeing the same stories. And I do agree with Maurice in the sense that yes, we have seen like a positive progression, but I think they were just frustrated that there was a lot of effort, but it never seemed to have any results. Like things were always half started, and then we would never really see anything after that. So I think that's really where it stemmed from, a place of frustration, but also a place of loving APU and wanting to see it grow and wanting to push it more towards that conversation. And I think maybe these conversations were happening in administration, but not so much with students, and we really wanted to spark that conversation with students as well.
Now, from an outside perspective, we haven't really seen a public face behind Activate. You're the first member of Activate that's gone on record with us, or really on any sort of major public forum. We have Jonathan Butler, who's at the University of Missouri, who went on a hunger strike to bring the attention in sort of a drastic but somewhat appropriate way to the conversation. Why haven't we seen a comparable person from Activate do something similar?
I think we're honestly going through a transition. Last year we had a lot of our people graduate, and this year we were kind of trying to figure out what we wanted to look like. And I think the beauty of Activate is that we don't necessarily have a leadership. We're just a group of concerned students, so there's not a point person that you can go to. And I think that's like the main that's the main reason that there hasn't been a face.
And do you think that's a good model of operation, to not have core leadership, but to really just have everybody be inclusive?
I think it is, in the sense that everybody has a different perspective and we're all coming from different places on campus, and we're going to see things differently. And I think when you bring a team of people who are in that way, we have a better opportunity of reaching out to different parts of the campus.
Have you achieved what you wanted to achieve as of present day?
No.
Okay, can you carry that out a little bit more?
Yeah, I think we are hoping to see more policy put in place with administration. Last year we had 3 resolutions. One of them was resolved, and we're really happy about that. Ethnic orgs budgets were increased, which I think has been super helpful for them. But I think we're still hoping to see a lot more progression in the sense of everyday interactions with students. When something happens, we're hoping that a policy will be set in place with administration for them to have a required training that they have to attend. And we're looking into having more resolutions.
Is one of Activate's goals to become a recognized student ethnic organization?
I don't think so, no. I think one of the beauties of Activate, because that we're not an on-campus legit group, I guess you could say, is there's a lot of freedom in that. There's not the pressure that ethnic orgs have. I think ethnic orgs are great, and I mean, I'm an active member of one, but there's a lot that we have to do already. And there's a lot of, I guess, regulations in that, and I think that's fine. But with Activate, I think the freedom that it has provides it a lot of room to like really question things with APU.
And you think that I'm sorry, did you have something to add to that, Dr.?
No, I want to finish, and then I wanted to add on. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So yeah, I just think it leaves a lot of room, and I mean, we try to, obviously it makes it more difficult to do things on campus, and we don't necessarily want to always be that like for weird, awkward group and like, how do we do this, or like have to spontaneously do things. And I think we can work more towards a partnership eventually, but we just haven't really gotten to that point yet.
So I just wanted to say one of the things that I appreciate is Dahlia coming forward. As we had last year, several students come forward and were actual faces behind Activate. Because you can criticize from a distance or clap from a distance, but to actually come face forward and to engage in the dialogue, to be in the arena together, that's where real change takes place. So in follow-up to what Dahlia was sharing, Activate had 3 resolutions last year, in fact, one of which was to increase the budgets of ethnic organizations on campus. And as she's commented, there was an increase in the budgets of the ethnic orgs. The other was to have a process in place that if there were diversity offenses that took place on campus, that there would be a streamlined process of students knowing where to go and who to contact. And actually, we created that at the end of last year with some input from the Activate students. It's a student resource sheet, 1 page, that we made available to student leaders and others throughout campus so that students know what's protocol. If an offensive thing takes place in class, what are the resources or the support mechanisms that I have in place to actually have some support? I'm not out there on my own. The other is, in terms of diversity training, we created this brochure to highlight some of the diversity programming, policies, and procedures across campus at the student level, faculty and staff, and university-wide. But with that, Activate requested that mandatory training take place on campus. We're not where we need to be, but I'm happy to report that every new faculty orientation, there is a diversity component for all new faculty. HR also provides training through Imago Dei for incoming staff as well. And then at the faculty kickoff this year, myself and a few of our faculty did a segment on microaggressions and talked about Sabona, how do we see each other in this culture here at APU. We currently have the Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive Excellence working on an online module that will be used as a training for not only adjuncts, but full-time faculty who can't come to our diversity trainings on campus, where they can continue their learning to become culturally literate, what we're saying literate or competent, and be able to successfully navigate differences here on campus and also in our pluralistic society. Which is tricky. We need education. So lots of good things are happening. Our trainings and workshops on campus for faculty, staff, administrators, we've reached record numbers. I mean, we used to, I think last year, we were happy if we got 20 people at a training. This year we've seen upwards of 70 people, staff, administration, and faculty saying we want to learn. So I think some really good things are happening, and I just want to make sure we get that message out.
And if I,
sorry, please go ahead.
I think one of the things last year, specifically with Activate, is I don't think people realized how involved Activate was with administration. We were, since the beginning, in communication with them. We had been emailing them these resolutions. It wasn't just we are here and this is what we're doing, but we really were trying to be in contact. But it was difficult to communicate that to the greater APU body. And then as far as the sheet, I think we do appreciate and value the sheet and what it provides. But again, I think there still needs to be more, and it's a baby step towards what we want, but we're still looking to see a policy and maybe one specific person.
Yeah, and that's a great foreshadowing to the question I'm about to ask, which we've had tangible goals that have been met, as you've just said. And to give background to this, Dr. Danu, you're sort of at the center point of this diversity initiative that APU has been carrying out, especially as of late. So I want to ask, from a staff and faculty perspective and from a student perspective, we'll start with faculty, do you think that enough has been done?
And to this point in
the initiative that Dr. Danu and the rest of the faculty is carrying out.
Yeah, so some context for me. So I did undergrad here late 80s, early 90s, so about 23 years ago, and trying to put that in perspective as where we are today, and about 1,600 students back then, no Office of Diversity, no student organizations, no representation really for students of color. So to bring us up to this point, to see the progression of where we are, that doesn't mean we have arrived, and it doesn't mean that we should rest in what we do. So I think to answer the question specifically, I think we've come a long way in very good strides. The issues and the microaggressions and the racism that happens on campus, that not only Activate has brought awareness to the campus, but other students have, is an ongoing thing that we will always be challenged with. So I think, have we fully arrived? No, but I think we're doing some really great things that Dr. Danu has mentioned. But we have a ways to go. But it is, as Dr. Danu said, is the things that have been, or there's been resolution to, it's getting that out to the greater communities so that they are aware of that. And some of the challenges that we face are the personnel issues that come along with that, where what we can and can't really say, when we are dealing with people for their own privacy and legality around that. So I think to the best that we have done to this point is, we're doing good, but we can be better. If that answers the question for you.
From a student perspective, Maurice, you're about to walk across the stage in May, you just told me. Will you be proud doing so, knowing the changes that APU has made?
I think I will be proud, and I think from this perspective that I am at, I think the in terms of the disconnection, I think it lies between the distinction between the students and the students' leaders. And so from being a leader from the past 3 or 4 years, I've seen the strides that the administration have gone to. I think the disconnection, it lies between the students don't know. And so they don't know what's happening between the issues that are happening on campus, or if there's a racially motivated event, they're not sure what steps that we're taking to address the issue, whether that's from the diversity office or the SCRD. So I think for me, I will be proud that we've come thus far, but I want to look forward to it post-graduation, that we are going higher in those steps.
A question I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, can I just mention something too? I really appreciate the comments of Dahlia and Maurice as they're sharing from their students' perspectives in particular. But I want to go back to something that Aaron mentioned earlier. When I started here, I came here 18 years ago, straight out of grad school. And I was one of two full-time African-American faculty female faculty members. So to see where we are today, to see 27% of our faculty are faculty of color, is a big step in the right direction. Not where we need to be. Definitely we want to grow those numbers, but we're currently 27% faculty and staff of color. Our incoming students, about 53% incoming students of color, which when you look at other CCCU schools, we're leading the way. So I think as we join arms with our students and we work together, I think we can really be leading the nation in terms of particularly Christian schools as well as secular, that we can help provide even a motivation higher than being politically correct, that we're being biblically correct. Sure. and moving the agenda forward to bring people together.
I've heard each four of you say we're not where we need to be, but we're making good strides. I'd like to end the panel today by simply asking the question, how do we move forward? What significant change would each of you like to see that has not already taken place?
It's a great question. I think the challenge with policy and programs and events is those don't always change heart and value for people. And I think once we could look at the challenge of how do people view and value issues of diversity, calling out racism, calling out those things, I think that's when we begin to make biggest change. From our office, from the Student Center for Reconciliation and Diversity, we do an Imago Dei training for all student leaders, about 500 or so. Initiatives out of our office would to have that training be for all incoming first-year students, whether they are freshmen, first-year students, or transfers, and then how do we continue to thread that conversation throughout the year, and not just be a box to check once one time out of the year to say, hey, we've stopped to talk about diversity. So I think that would be part of the student value that I see taking place.
Dahlia?
Yeah, I think, like everybody said, like we've seen a lot of progression throughout the past few years, and I really do appreciate that. But I think that like everybody has said, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think one of the major things that I would love to see is for the focus to stop being on majority culture students. I think we say that it's not, but a lot of times our programming and our events and all that sort of thing is centered on their feelings and the way that they would receive the information. And I think for far too long, students of color have had to carry that weight and that burden on them because they're the ones that have to educate. They're the ones that have to speak for their culture. And I don't think that's fair for students of color. We have our students just like everybody else, and we have a lot going on, and to have the added burden or the added load on us is not fair to us, and I think that truly needs to change.
Wow, how much time do we have? Okay, so in my perfect world, all board members, administration, faculty, staff, and students would be required to go through diversity training. Now, diversity training in a one-time shot is not the panacea for anything because ignorance has to be addressed at multiple levels, including in places that impact the heart for long-term change. But nevertheless, so that's one point. We are going to be embarking upon a campus climate study starting next week, and that's going to help us see where our gaps are in our community to make sure we're hearing all the voices. But that is one of my agenda items, to see training take place at all levels, that you cannot be a part of the APU community without ongoing or furthering your education on cultural competency and understanding, civility. I will say we are set in January to do a leadership summit for all leaders across campus, from administrators to chairs of academic departments, to have a diversity segment for them. But we want to keep moving that forward. What does it look like to graduate here from APU, to be culturally an ambassador for the world to go around? Just one other thing I would say, I as an educator, it's important for me that we use our social power to educate and create a space for grace, because in terms of diversity. So what does that look like? I think too often, if there's a fear that if I say something that is offensive, that, oh, I'm gonna get backlash or bullied or whatever, that people clamp down. And so they don't say what they're thinking until they're around homogeneous populations. And then these cycles of bad jokes and things persist. But if we can create some space for grace here in this community, as we're an institution of higher ed, where we not only teach in the classroom, but we teach outside of the classroom. And we help educate each other in a safe space that, yeah, I may goof up, I may say something stupid or unintelligent, but if I can count on Dahlia to say, hey, Dr. Cam, that's not cool, and here's why, that helps me feel safe enough to correct that behavior and learn a new path. Finally, I just think this is a great place, and if we have more students and faculty and staff committed to working together, along with administration, we can do some great things.
Maurice, what do you want to see change?
I think for me, I think I agree with Dahlia in the sense that we are in an institution where a lot of the programming and the departments are geared towards the majority culture, and that's not a bad thing to adapt to that. But we have to figure out and brainstorm how do we get people of color and the minority to integrate and to adapt to these kind of programs that are set for our institution. I think the other thing is that in terms of administration, it comes down to we are changing a mindset and we're changing the heart. And so in my own experiences, I've seen a lot of teachers and faculty, they know these conversations and they're aware that it's happening, but it's a matter of changing their heart and their mentality to understand and believe that these things are happening to people who may not look like you, but it's still important and their backgrounds are still valid.
If I could just make a quick comment on that. I think I agree that like the end goal is to change the heart, but it's hard to do so when we don't have policy and structure in place, because that really does help gear the conversation and gear not necessarily the conversation, but the action and the way things are handled.
Yeah.
I could just say one last thing too. So, yeah, this idea, I was saying earlier as an educator, that's important to create a milieu for education. The second piece for me would be, as a Christian institution, I think we have a higher motivation for doing this work. And that is to reconcile people to God first, to reconcile each other to each other, and then to help reconcile with ourselves, because internalized racism is real, and we take a lot of times people of color some of the sickness of the world and we turn it inward, which can be very destructive. So as we look at this work of reconciliation and diversity, I think as Christians we actually have a better motivation for it.
Thank you guys all so much for your comments today. I know I speak on behalf of everybody at Capture when I say we're excited to see where this conversation goes, and we'll be excited to monitor it too as a student media outlet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Los Angeles County commuters can expect major improvements to be made to the 57 and 60 interchange starting early next year. Lauren Duran has the details.
Last week, the U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration broke ground on the first phase of the 57 and 60 Confluence Project. The project is anticipated to alleviate congestion, reduce time spent in traffic, enhance safety, and increase capacity in both Diamond Bar and Industry. Just last year, the bottleneck intersection was ranked number 1 for truck delays and accidents in California and number 8 in the United States. Pico Rivera resident Russell Pearson was at the forefront when he was hit by a semi-truck while riding his motorcycle through the intersection.
It ran over my leg, it broke it in 16 places. There's 26 screws with 18 plates, and I'm going to be out for 6 months.
The construction is anticipated to cost approximately $256 million, with the first phase beginning in January.
Thanks for that report, Lauren. For more information on road closures and delays, check out the website below. Tuesday night, APU students had the chance to make their business idea dreams a reality. Here's Sierra Seipert with the story.
I'm here outside of UTCC for APU's 3rd annual Zoo Ventures. APU staff, students, and friends came out to watch the top 7 entrepreneur teams compete in the final round of Zoo Ventures.
We as believers, especially here at APU, have a responsibility to do more than just be good businessmen and women. We have a responsibility to do good in the world.
Teams pitched their ideas in front of a panel of esteemed judges. After the team's presentation, judges had the opportunity to ask questions and provide helpful tips for the teams.
This may seem an unfair question, but I have to ask.
Audience members had the chance to participate by texting in their vote on who they believed was best in show.
The best in show tonight was the Red State!
After much deliberation, the judges finally announced the winners. The 3rd place team was rewarded $2,000, the 2nd place team was rewarded $3,000, and the 1st place prize of $15,000 went to Maritza Grissom with her app Precept Me.
I think that winning this has really showed me that other people see the need and other people believe that it's worthy of investing in. So I think that's really just sparked a fire inside of me to go out and to be confident and to pitch this idea to more investors.
Zoo Ventures strives to empower students through professional coaching and opportunities to express their passions and make their business dreams a reality.
Thanks, Sierra. Congratulations to Maritza Grissom for winning the first place prize for her mobile application, Precept Me, which connects medical students and preceptors. Last night, the Student Government Association hosted their second annual The Table event. During the event, students, staff, and faculty members were able to dine together and cultivate meaningful conversations. SGA did not want a set agenda for the evening, so instead they provided conversation cards for the tables. The turnout for the night was a success, with 450 people in attendance. To accommodate everyone, the long table stretched from Cougar Walk into the Engstrom parking lot. Student Government President Max Walden discusses more on the ideas behind the event.
The Table is a giant family-style meal. We've done it 2 times now, and we're hoping to establish it as an annual tradition. We think that tradition actually kind of forms your identity, and that the more you do something, the more it becomes a part of you. And so this is just a family dinner, a chance for us to all get together and talk casually from all aspects and walks of campus life. And we hope it's a chance to bring unity rather than discontinuity or arguments on campus.
For more updates on upcoming SGA events, visit apusga.org. That is all we have for today. Please remember to like our page on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at APU Capture. I'm Clint Simone, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Capture.